Hi, I'm Dr. Jeff Nickel, and I have Miss America, the family border collie. I have Gaston, a little fuzzy white guy, and Tony the gray cat. Well, he'll be up here soon. So, thank you for tuning in. This is a special Facebook Live because what we're going to talk about is elderly dogs, and many of them do just fine into their golden years, but some of them don't. In fact, dogs who between the ages of 11 to 12 years are at a 28% risk of developing dementia, and dogs aged 14 to 16, 68% incidence. So this is a big problem, and it is overlooked many times by pet parents and frankly in many cases by veterinarians because people don't know to ask. And what you want to look for is gradual changes. These pets, sometimes they start to pace and they can become confused. And so I want to run through some of the symptoms for you because just like most anything in the body, the brain is a very physical organ, and with cognitive dysfunction syndrome, the name we give dementia in dogs, almost identical to Alzheimer's in people, if we catch it early, we've got a much better chance of improving life and in giving an older pet more good time. Sometimes a few months, sometimes over a year. And so early treatment makes all the difference, and we rely, of course, on the pet parent to pick up on changes because, again, they can be gradual and they don't always get noticed. So, look for things like confusion. Dogs sometimes will, they might go through a doorway they've been through thousands of times in their life, and they start going toward the hinge side of the door, like they forgot where the heck the opening of the door was. Sometimes they stare blankly at the wall or the floor. For long periods. They might walk into a room and just, of course we all do this, stand there and say, what the heck did I come in here for? But a dog with cognitive dysfunction will stand there for quite a while and just stand there. I might shift their gaze. Relationships with other household pets and with the pet parents, the family, can change as well. Some of these dogs might get more clingy and more, needy for attention, while some other pets, and this goes for cats and dogs as they get older and may develop dementia, some of them become less interested in interacting. So it's those changes. Sometimes people come to us with behavior problems that one of my first questions is, when did you start noticing it? Because if it's a problem that started when the dog or cat was young or a young adult, that's one thing. But if it starts when they're, 10 years old, 12 years old, and in some cases as young as 8, we start considering the possibility of a dementia problem developing. So, look for things also like, well, this dog used to be pretty even-tempered and now she startles easily. Or she sleeps a lot more during the day, but at night, we get this reversed day-night cycle. And so at nighttime, some of them are going to be waking up a lot and getting anxious and restless at night. And sometimes they start pacing at night. They might seem sleepy during the day. And we've all heard these things about, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Well, the truth is, a lot of people well into their 60s, 70s, and 80s, they take college courses and they do very well because their brains are sharp. But if you have a dementia problem, I don't care what your species, cat, dog, or human, if the brain is starting to shrink and neurons are beginning to die in big numbers, well, the ability to learn isn't there either. So you ought to be able to teach a dog or a cat simple obedience at any point in their life, unless, of course, they have dementia. So, and then there's house soiling. People sometimes say, gee, this dog is urinating or defecating or both in the house. Never used to happen. That's telling me something. That means that those folks did a very reliable and excellent job of house training that dog or cat as a youngster. It was reliable and consistent throughout its life. And then in older age, it starts, forgetting. In fact, we've even had some dogs who have stopped climbing the stairs in a two-story house And it's been assumed that, well, older joints are going to be uncomfortable, which very often they are. And so that's why the dog won't go up the stairs anymore, or the cat. And then we come to recognize other indicators of cognitive decline. And we start the pet on treatment, and they respond nicely. And then well, gee, I do remember how to get up the stairs. So it's one of those things where you just have to have an index of suspicion and be ready to, you okay there, sweetheart? We got a little hairball in your throat? So let me tell you a little story about a dog named Millie. When she came to me, she was 11 and a half years old, spayed female black lab, a lovely dog. And she was so bonded with her person, a lady in her early 70s, lived alone with Millie. Goodness gracious, you going to be okay, honey? And so she was beginning to notice that Millie was starting to get confused. And, you know, she was becoming a little bit pesky with her person. It had never been a problem before. And she was getting kind of clingy. She would wake at night, walk and pant and pace. And, you know, all of her life, she had never had a problem with thunderstorms. But now, just in the last several months, when a thunderstorm came up, old Millie was starting to really get frightened. So she was becoming noise sensitive. This is not something that had been an issue for her through most of her life. Well, now it was becoming a problem. So we had these later in life changes. And so we decided, well, let's treat this dog for cognitive dysfunction. But it's always important to rule out other considerations. We never just jump to a diagnosis, especially with cognitive decline, because there is no specific test for it. It's done on history. Of course, in humans, they go with history, but they also put an older person through a variety of cognitive tests. And that's actually done in the laboratory with dogs and cats. But as they get older, you know, that's not cost effective, and we don't have labs like that everywhere. And so what we're going to do with our dogs is we're going to just go with history and get very, very specific. We also have to rule out other possibilities. So we, of course, submitted a lab profile on Millie, make sure there wasn't kidney or liver disorders, because they can certainly affect the function of the brain and mimic cognitive decline. And we also did a very careful neurologic evaluation, because age-related problems like brain tumors, they're not that rare, and they can present in a variety of different ways depending on what part of the brain is affected by the tumor. So all of that stuff has to be ruled out, because it becomes a diagnosis of exclusion. In other words, we exclude the other possibilities, and if the symptoms fit, then we're likely to put a diagnosis of cognitive dysfunction. And it's much better for us to maybe be incorrect about that diagnosis on occasion, because the treatment is totally safe. And in fact, we're using diet, and we're using supplements, and we're using exercise, and not just physical exercise, but brain exercise as well. And we're going to get real clear on that in just a minute. So with my evaluation of Millie, we came to find that, yeah, she did have some arthritic problems. One elbow was fairly badly arthritic, and well, that didn't contribute a great deal to these cognitive symptoms that she had. And yeah, she also had storm phobia. So we went ahead with treatment. And this dog actually did pretty well. It's a rare home run we get with cognitive dysfunction. But in her case, after about 6 months of treatment, it was clear that her pet mother was pleased. She found that Millie was able to interact and enjoy her leash walks much more than she had. And she was really getting into these food puzzles, and I'll show you one here in just a minute. And it was interactive. It was something that she and Millie were able to do together. And so consequently, it really helped strengthen the bond, because in some dogs and older cats, that can suffer with cognitive decline. Well, we went ahead and continued treatment, and at 1 year, she was still doing well. And at 1.5 years, we were adjusting. We actually added in an anti-anxiety medication to help with good night sleep, because Millie was restless. So was her mom, and nobody was sleeping well, so we had to get that under control. We do what it takes. And at about 1.5 years, she was still doing pretty well. And then over the space of about 3 weeks, the wheels fell off, and she went downhill pretty quickly, and she was put to sleep, which, you know, it's the sad reality. But just like Alzheimer's at people with cognitive dysfunction syndrome of cats and dogs, nobody gets out alive. It is terminal. But the beauty of it is that we can buy some really excellent time for many of these pets, which they would not have had it not been recognized by its person and had it not been given a thorough treatment by the veterinarian. So, yeah, there's always a sad end to these things, but then there's let's face it, a sad end to everybody's life, because nobody lives forever anyway. And if you're going to get a dementia problem in your elderly years, if we can improve it and make it better, then we've provided a valuable service for the pet and also for the family who loves that pet. So the kinds of things that we can do, and by the way, if you have any questions about this, if you have a pet who you're concerned might have early symptoms of cognitive dysfunction, by all means put it right in, and I'll interrupt this Facebook Live to address that. And in fact, as we get a little closer toward the end, if you have any questions about your pets, it doesn't have to be having to do with an elderly pet, by all means put it in there. And you know, we don't talk that much about cats because frankly, they seem like they're on autopilot through their lives. Well, they're not. And older cats who have this problem, as much as some dogs with cognitive dysfunction will bark pointlessly, I mean pretty continually, older cats can be quite vocal as well. Again, it's an age-related change, and they can walk around the house meowing just about incessantly. You start noticing that kind of thing. Don't just write the cat off or say, okay, you've lived out your life. A lot of these cats, they do much better, and they get more good time with their families. So the general treatments on these things, we start with diet. There are a few excellent diets for dogs, none for cats, but that have been fortified with some very specific antioxidants. And you know, we hear a lot about oxidative stress, free oxygen radicals, that kind of damage in people throughout our lives. Well, the same is true for other creatures. And it takes its toll on a lot of organs, but the brain, I'll tell you what, is heavily affected by oxidative damage. And so antioxidants, many of these are fat-soluble vitamins, B vitamins, fatty acids, things like this can make a very big difference. And to have them balanced appropriately and the correct ones in the right amount in these prescription diets, very important. Hill's Pet Products makes one called BD, but a newer one made by Purina, which you don't need a prescription from your veterinarian to get, is called Proplan for Bright Minds, also called 7+ Maturity. And let me turn this around on the camera so you can get a good look at it. I took a picture of it. There it is right there. That's what the label looks like. You can get this stuff online. You can get it in pet supply stores like PetSmart and Petco. And those are, the diet is exceptionally valuable in these things. And so, by all means, get that started. In fact, you can make a very good case for getting started with a diet like Proplan Bright Mind Maturity in dogs, any dog that's 8 or 10 or plus. Even if they're sharp as a tack, this can help maintain healthy brain function. And one important difference beyond the antioxidants is the medium chain triglycerides, MCTs. These provide an alternative energy source in the brain by promoting ketone bodies in the brain. And this helps a brain function even if you've got to die off of neurons. So a diet like this is a really valuable part of the whole thing. The other thing that, well, one of many things, is daily brisk walks a couple times a day. Now, you got an older pet, you're not going to make them climb Mount Everest. But we also know that a sedentary lifestyle, even when joints are bad and a little bit uncomfortable, actually hastens their worsening, their advancement of degenerative joint disease. And so if we have a couple of brisk walks, they don't have to be long ones, but we actually understand physiologically how that improves brain function as well as joint function. So I would make it a structure, do those walks at about the same time every day, so that it's something the dog can look forward to. If it's predictable, it sharpens the brain as well. Dogs are into predictors, you know. When I start to see these things happen, and I know the walk is coming. Exercising the dog's brain. I mentioned that a few minutes ago. This is one of many different kinds of pet puzzles. This is one where these little doors open up, and you put food in the little hole there, and then you close the doors, and then the dog has to rotate the, see if I can get the darn thing to work. Yes, you've used this, Miss America. There we go. The dog has to, you have to have a veterinarian who understands a pet food puzzle. Anyway, you put the food in there, and the dog has to rotate it and flip up the doors in order to find the food. So you can help the dog do this. You can require the dog to think and use its face and its paws, and cheat a little bit, help the older dog do it. And cats can do these as well. And so this sharpens the brain, and in fact they find that challenges to the brain, moderate stresses to the brain for older people makes a big difference as well, because they can actually recruit neurons from the white matter, what's generally been considered the housekeeping area of the brain. We come to learn it does much more than that. But neurons, brain cells that really weren't designed to be thinking, cognitive, decision-making brain cells, can actually get recruited from other parts of the brain and shift their morphology, shift their function in their anatomy to become thinking brain cells. And you do that with moderate stress to the brain, and these food puzzles can be a very helpful part of that. So, boy, do that. Fish oil matters. Dogs under 50 pounds, we give them about 1,000 milligrams twice a day. Dogs over 50 pounds, 2,000 milligrams twice a day. Has antioxidant properties. Let's face it, it's good for the heart. Anybody our age, my age, baby boomers and older, fish oil, you can't go wrong. It's an anti-inflammatory as well, which, by the way, cognitive dysfunction in dogs and cats and Alzheimer's in people, those are inflammatory brain diseases. So we cut inflammation, that can matter. SAMe is something else. Many people take it. We know that over-the-counter, from online websites, health food stores, SAMe, S-adenosylmethionine, is present in every living cell in the body and in the brain. It helps those brain cells, those neurons, work better by promoting better transmission of the electric current across the cell wall. And I'm going to show you a couple of things here in just a minute. I'll show you. I'll turn the camera around so you can read the label. This other one is called Senilife. This has very useful antioxidants, including ginkgo biloba, easy for me to say, and phosphatidylserine. And these are things that help promote brain function. And this is developed for use in the dog. So let me turn the camera around and I'll show you this. And we also use both of these in cats. Uh-oh, I messed this up here. Uh-oh. All right, there we go. Okay. There. Okay. So here is this veterinary brand called Denicil. Your veterinarian can get this for you. And it's going to be better absorbed in dogs and cats than over-the-counter stuff that is developed for humans. So while the over-the-counter SAMe can be helpful, the Denicil brand is going to be better. And then this is the Senilife. They make regular Senilife for smaller dogs. This happens to be the Senilife XL for bigger dogs. And these are natural. They are not medications. There are no side effects. And the Denicil in particular, the SAMe, can be very good for anxieties, which we tend to see in older dogs, and for depression, which we see in some of these dogs with cognitive dysfunction, because it contains the building blocks of the neurotransmitter serotonin. So they're recommending this often for people for some of the same reasons, but the made-for-dogs formula, the Denicil, D-E-N-O-S-Y-L, is generally ideal. So, Prevagen, have you ever seen that advertised for people? We use that in dogs too for some of the same reasons. It has something called apoquinone. It's a calcium protein buffering agent. Helps improve brain function. And also the East Indian spice called turmeric. That's found in many East Indian foods. It contains something called curcumin. And curcumin is available. You can put that on your food. It's one big reason statistically people living in East India and eating their traditional dishes have a far lower incidence of Alzheimer's than people in other parts of the world. But this stuff is available as a supplement that is in a nanoparticle and a brand name called Theracumin, T-H-E-R-A-C-U-M-I-N, Theracumin. You can get it online. You don't need a prescription. And that can buy good time because it improves the function of the brain. So the other pets who don't sleep well, we sometimes will give them melatonin, but you have to give it every single evening a couple hours before bedtime for that to start making a difference. Usually we're going to give about 15 milligrams per pound. I'm sorry, 1 milligram per 15 pounds. Pardon me. It'd be a lot of melatonin. 1 milligram per 15 pounds of body weight. And use it for at least a couple weeks before you decide that, yeah, it is or it is not helpful. Now, your veterinarian can also prescribe other medications, things like gabapentin or a medication called clonazepam at bedtime, because some of these older pets, we absolutely have to really get serious about the anxiety at bedtime, or it affects everybody's quality of life. Now, that's a whole lot of stuff. And if you want to send me your email address on my Facebook page, then I'm happy to send you the full list of these treatments that you can share with your veterinarian. And of course, any veterinarian anywhere in the world is welcome to contact me. I happen to be pretty darn knowledgeable about cognitive dysfunction because it was the subject of my research during my residency in behavior medicine. Well, that's pretty much what I have. I hope we can make life better for everybody. We get so bonded to our pets, and when they're suffering, it's a problem for all of us. And if they feel better, we feel better because we have a natural empathy, and we want their lives to be as good as possible for as long as possible. And that's what matters to me with mine. So thank you very much for tuning in. And if you would like to get this Facebook Live and every week's Facebook Live, plus my what we call the media article, my newspaper column in the previous week's Albuquerque Journal, then sign up for subscribe to my website. Go to Dr. Jeff Nicol, DrJeffNichol.com, and you can subscribe for free. And when you do, I will send you my free at-home pet first aid and CPR guide. So thank you again for tuning in. And it looks like I have a question. Richard, you're welcome. I got to tell you, I do this because I want to improve the lives of pets and their people, and I've been practicing for a long time, sharing information. But to have somebody just say, hey, thank you, that was helpful, that's an inspiration for me. And so I appreciate that kind of stuff. And so does Tony, and so does Miss America, and Gaston. He's jumped on the floor. I think he's chasing food or something, whatever. Cats have their own lives. So thank you again for tuning in. And I'll see everybody next week. I'm planning another Facebook Live for Thursday evening of next week at 6 o'clock Mountain Time, which makes it 8 o'clock Eastern. And we're going to talk about a problem in the western half of the United States. We're going to talk about this horrible weed called foxtails that cause so much trouble in cats and dogs. And even if you live on the East Coast, I think you might find it valuable. So hope everybody has a wonderful Friday tomorrow and a great weekend.